100%. And another one that I would highly recommend is make sure you're doing SMS with email. I think a lot of times they operate in silos where somebody thinks, hey, we're getting email going. And that in itself is a great platform. Or, hey, we have loyalty. Or, hey, we have SMS. Try and have an actual integrated marketing effort across the board. They all support each other.
Welcome to the Ecommerce Marketing Podcast, the highly rated digital marketing podcast that provides weekly digital marketing tips and strategies from some of the world's top digital marketers and e-commerce entrepreneurs that will help you take your digital marketing to the next level. Sit back and enjoy this power-packed episode hosted by Arlen Robinson, who is an e-commerce entrepreneur and digital marketing expert with over 20 years of experience. Hey, e-commerce marketing podcast listener. Are you looking to increase traffic and sales to your website? You can do this by launching your own affiliate program. Just visit getosi.com and sign up for a free trial today. That's getosi.com. Now get ready to hear from your e-commerce marketing expert of the week as they drill down to give you details on marketing strategies that can help grow your business.
Welcome back to the E-Commerce Marketing Podcast, everyone. My name is Arlen, and I am your host. Today, we've got a very special guest, Jesse K., who is the founder and CEO of Viber Media, a performance marketing agency specializing in helping 8- and 9-figure brands unlock scalable, high-margin digital growth through innovative youth-focused strategies. Jesse has worked with professional athletes, small business owners, and Fortune 1000 CEOs to drive measurable results in email, SMS, paid social, growth marketing, and influencer marketing campaigns. Welcome to the podcast, Jesse.
Thanks so much for having me, Arlen. I'm looking forward to this and excited for this conversation.
Yes, and thank you for joining. I'm really excited to talk to you as well. We're going to be diving deep into a subject that you're pretty keen on. You've been working with a lot of clients in this space, and we're going to specifically be talking about how to efficiently build, scale, and monetize email and SMS lists to over 200,000 subscribers, which me personally, I've been in business as long as I have, is not an easy feat. And of course, you're going to be enlightening us a little bit on that and giving us some helpful tips. But before we do dive into that, so reading your bio, you provided a good backstory, and I'm super curious. The main question I have is I got a note that said you launched your first podcast at just 16. And then it looks like you've been hitting the ground running ever since, which actually then led to, building Viber Media. Really, at that age, what really sparked your entrepreneurial passion and the whole interest in getting into a podcast and then going from there?
Yeah, similar to you, when we started podcasts, it was not cool yet. So
Gotcha.
It was a unique thing. I was in a junior year entrepreneurship class in high school, and I was all interested. I was like, entrepreneurship. I started reselling sneakers. That sounds fun.
Yeah.
Start the class, and they're like, all right, this whole year we write a business plan. And I was like, get me out of this class. And they said too late to get out. So I was like, all right, I guess I'm stuck in this thing. But long story short on the podcast was we had to write a business plan, come up with an idea, and try and execute on it. And I realized all these kids in my class were super creative, had great ideas. Nobody knew how to do it. They had this idea, but they didn't know how to execute. So the original thought was, hey, why don't I go interview successful entrepreneurs? At first, I started with founders in their 20s or below to help inspire the next generation of entrepreneurs, my classmates. I had nobody to interview, obviously. I was a random 16-year-old kid with no followers. So I did the, I guess, insane thing looking back on it now, which was I sent a ton of cold emails. I sent hundreds of cold emails a day, every day for 6 months to get my initial guests on, and then literally emails before school, emails in science class, emails during lunch, emails after school, email at night. And a ton of people didn't respond. A lot of people said no. Some people did. And that's how I grew the show. The first 2 years were really just outbound, trying to build the show with very minimal listeners. And then over time, got bigger names, the Jack Dorseys of the world, or Mark Cuban, or Gary Vaynerchuk, some of those bigger names with followings. And that grew the listener base as they shared them. And then it was a very nice turn of events when a couple of years ago it became inverted, where most of the requests were inbound and there was a real audience base rather than me shooting outbound for months on months to try and get 2% of the people to respond.
Sure. Absolutely. Well, yeah, that's quite a story, man. And thank you for sharing that. That really kind of speaks to your stick-to-itiveness and your dedication, especially at that young age. I mean, because you mentioned, firing out these cold emails before school, during science class, after school, and, all times in between. And you just stuck with it and eventually were able to get those guests on and, the snowball effect happened and, I guess the rest is history. So, yeah, that really, like I said, speaks to what a lot of entrepreneurs have to really do to get things going. It's just, you got to stick with it, even when things aren't, slow. You had no following, and I'm sure people were getting these emails of like, who's this kid? Why would I go on his show? But you just kept with it, and everything really just eventually worked out. So that's super awesome. Now to really kick things off, as far as our topic is concerned, why would you say is building a large, high quality email and SMS list really still such a powerful asset for an e-commerce brand today in 2025?
Yeah, I think the biggest one, we have this conversation with brands all the time, going from the small businesses, let's call them $1 to $10 million, all the way up to the Fortune 1000 enterprise level. And I think the biggest part of it and how we view it is kind of the ecosystem of where you're hosting all of this data and people that you're driving traffic from. So you could drive an unlimited amount of paid traffic, organic traffic, social, all of that. But the hub you're probably driving them to is a website. And if you don't have a platform to collect, retain, and then use that data intentionally, you're spending hundreds of thousands of dollars a month, if not more, for the hope that somebody converts on the front, and then you can maybe pixel them on the back, but there's not a tremendous amount of intentional direct-to-consumer efforts there. So we view email and SMS as kind of the engine that continues to grow incrementally, because you're going to continue to send to your existing base, and then you're adding a whole bunch of net new people where you're already spending money. So our hope on email is that it self-liquidates your acquisition funnel on the top, so that you're break even or profitable, hopefully, on customer acquisition. And then on top of that, there's lifetime value, because you're getting a ton of data on your consumers to help market to them at the right time, because you don't want to spam people. You don't want to send a million things. But if you can hone in a really good email program, we've seen it add 20 to 30% net profit to relatively large businesses, because it's just a channel they haven't tapped into. When they have a massive business, they just never put their eyes there.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, it's interesting because, of course, there was a period where people were like, email, email was kind of dying out. SMS, they started to get some legs there and was starting to get a lot of traction. I mean, one of the interesting things, because I've had many people on, we've talked about email before, I think, and it kind of is in line with what you said, I think email is more important now than ever because of all of these, it's because of all of these other channels and all of these other distractions people have as far as what they're being bombarded with. And so, if you don't have, you could, of course, get that customer, you're doing these marketing campaigns, you're driving them to the site, they're checking you out, but, people are distracted. They're popping to your site, they're flipping on to Instagram, TikTok, they're all over the place. If you don't obtain and gather their information to follow up and create that ongoing relationship, they've forgotten about you in about 10 seconds as soon as they leave your site.
There's so much noise is the biggest takeaway. Like you said, there's a million pieces of companies and data trying to jump in front of you and get your attention. We view email as it's your loyal people who are automatically either buyers or they're proactively giving you their email or their phone number and telling you what they're interested in by the places that they're clicking and what they're viewing. Right. It's a great way to, number one, engage with them about products they're interested in. Number two, stay top of mind, because in this ecosystem, if you're not staying relevant and top of mind, you're losing to the noise. And then finally, that you can actually give specific offers at the right time and make sure you're not spamming and giving educational content and doing brand awareness stuff on top of the nuts and bolts, which is how to make it an efficient, profitable channel. There's all these other parts of education and video content and affiliates of really cool stuff to be able to give value back on top of the normal buying that you expect consumers to do on these channels.
Absolutely. And, of course, growing the list is, you can say, okay, you're starting out of the gate. Maybe you're a small, medium-sized e-commerce business and, you're starting to hear this and you're like, yeah, great, sounds good, but 200,000 subscribers is a big number. What would you say are the most cost-effective strategies or even tools that you found to grow a list from 0 all the way up to 200,000 subscribers without relying heavily on paid ads?
Yeah, so I think there's a couple. We'll talk about growth and all of that. I think that'll be part 2 of this answer. Part 1 is make sure everything currently is functional. Right. You'd be shocked how many brands we go to, from small businesses literally to brands doing hundreds of millions of dollars a year, where you go in and simple stuff is broken. Where there's a pop-up form on your website, but the name never passes through to the email service provider. Or the name funnels in, but it just sits there and it doesn't flow into a welcome series automation. And it sounds so basic, but I would highly encourage every person listening to this to log on to an incognito browser and go to your own website and go through the process as if you were a net new customer and just see what happens. I think you would be blown away by the gaps that are there. And then outside of that, at its simplest, is a couple things. Make sure the basics work off of that. So, and then we'll talk about growth and scale and how to get to 200,000 subscribers and all of that. But at its basics, the core things I would make sure are set up and are functional. Make sure you have pop-ups, like one core pop-up or one core place to put in an email address and offer on when you hit a landing page. The recommendation that we give is do it as a multi-step form, because if you have one page where it's first name, last name, email, interest, phone number, everyone's going to bounce. It's just not a reasonable expectation. But if you have a specific, just first name and email with a specific offer, whether it's join a giveaway or here's an offer or special access, that's usually compelling enough to get a first level first name and email. Typically, what we then recommend is on a second screen, congrats, you're signed up for X, and you can see this in your inbox. Also, give an option for a phone number, and then more importantly, give an option for people to select their preferences. So if it's a certain type of company, what are they interested in there? We like that because there's a lot of people that would give a phone number. They just don't want to do it on the first slide because you're going to lose a vast majority of people. We give them a compelling secondary offer. So that's the top of the funnel. Then we'd say, look at your actual email and SMS platform and make sure the basics are set up. You can get very complicated on how to do flows. The most important flows, our recommendation at its simplest, every e-commerce brand should have a welcome series, but have it different for purchasers and non-purchasers, because the most annoying thing a consumer could ever have is you just buy. I've seen this happen too many times where somebody goes to the website, buys something, and through that action joins an email list. And the first thing they get is, hey, save 10% on your first order. And then they're like, I just did my first order and I didn't get savings. Like, I could have gotten this if I don't do it. So make sure there's a split for purchasers and non-purchasers. Set up an abandoned cart and checkout flow, and then set up some sunset flow. So as people tease out where to go there. The fun part on scale with it is the hope is you can make it a self-liquidating funnel. So what does that mean? Where as you're spending, whether it's on Meta or Google or whatever channel you're using to drive traffic, that you can recover the acquisition cost through the automation sequence. So our benchmark is, hey, if we're driving traffic here, are we making enough in aggregate from a welcome series where it's profitable? So by the time 1,000 people have gotten out of the welcome series, we're net positive, and everything else from there on forward in lifetime value is pure profit. It's very sustainable to say, hey, we're going to go spend $10,000 a month on platform. And it could be far less than that. We've seen brands do it on $100 a month, sustainably continue to grow it because it's profitable. And you're growing the list. And not only is your automations growing, but your actual core campaigns are growing. So when you're sending those daily or coupled a week emails, that list has now gone from 20,000 people to 80,000 people to 100,000 people. And obviously revenue is growing in line with that.
Yeah, yes, absolutely. Yeah. One of the things that I've seen a lot, because I deal with many e-commerce businesses, is the first parts that you mentioned, those basic things, those mistakes, asking for the email up front. It's a lot, and just going through the site just to make sure the flow is good. It's clear where people can opt in, and there's nothing broken. Unfortunately, I've seen a ton of sites that you would think they would have all that together, but unfortunately they don't. So that's a step. It is. You don't want to skip that and then just jump into, okay, how are we going to grow this list? Because otherwise you're just spending dollars, and you might as well just be burning cash. Hey, before we jump into the next question, I want to take a quick second to talk about something that's been a game changer for so many business owners, including myself. That's public speaking. If you're running an e-commerce brand, marketing agency, or any business, your ability to communicate clearly and confidently can really make all the difference. Whether you're pitching to investors, speaking at conferences, or even just creating content that connects with your audience. That's exactly why I created speaktoempower.com, a coaching program designed to help you master public speaking without fear. You can start with my free 10-day course where I walk through essential strategies to overcome nervousness, engage in the audience, and speak with confidence. And if you want to go even deeper, I offer weekly virtual group coaching sessions and one-on-one coaching tailored to your needs. So if you've ever felt like you could be more confident on camera, on stage, or even in day-to-day business conversations, head over to speaktoempower.com and get started for free today. All right, now back to the episode.
That's the recommendation we typically have. Like on any client, usually the first thing when they say, hey, we want to grow this and scale, the short answer is let's do it. But first, let's pause and make sure everything works.
Yes.
Because too many times you go in and you scale later to find out that there's a missing link. And like there are brands, we've heard stories where they spent $40,000 on some ad and really burn a significant portion because they didn't realize that a part was funneling through there. And the other thing we tell brands is it's such an opportunity upside because a lot of these brands have functional things, but they don't realize how much money is being left on the table without having to spend net new. Like the net new spend is always good for bringing new customers in, but it's always shocking to brands how much money is currently left on the table without having to spend an extra dime because of making sure your flows are set up right, making sure your campaigns are going out at the right cadence, make sure you're sending to the right people, make sure your SMSs are targeted, like the things that from marketing standpoint, we'd call the basics. But for a lot of brands, obviously there's a need to make sure that that thing is functional and working properly and firing on all fronts.
Yeah, absolutely. And, you mentioned a couple key things there. Once you're getting people in the flow, as far as, making sure the funnel is going out, it's going on at the right time, your SMS campaigns are all synced up and sending people the messages at the right time. Now, as your list starts to grow, let's say you're doing all these things, you covered the basics, you've got a good funnel, the list is growing. Of course, a lot of it has to be kind of managed and I guess you could say you have to, of course, keep up that engagement. Over time, though, how do you and what have you seen as far as maintaining that list quality as the audience scales? Because, once you start hitting those big numbers after, 50K, 100K, and you're getting those big numbers, you can maybe get into a space where, all right, are all of these people really, in a certain part of the funnel where they could be potential buyers? How do you really make sure?
So important. I think it's equally important to the growth side because otherwise you have the vanity numbers that you get super excited by. You go say, hey, we have 100,000 followers or 100,000 subscribers. How many buy and how many are engaged?
Exactly.
So 2 parts to that. Number one, highly recommend every brand does just a quick list clean. Any email service provider should allow you to do this, which is go in and just take a look at like what emails are spam traps, what emails aren't working, what emails have never engaged, give them a reactivation offer, and then either move them cold or don't. We don't say remove them from your list permanently because usually there's some good data there for lookalike audiences and for some other stuff, but you don't need to be sending to those people. If somebody hasn't opened an email in 6 years, put them through a reactivation sequence. But I don't know if you're turning that name warm, if that's even an existing inbox still. So make sure you do a list clean because not only is it important just for a cost standpoint on sends, but equally, if not more importantly, from a deliverability standpoint, because if you're sending to bad inboxes and you're having a huge failed delivery rate or having a huge spam rate, it's going to hurt where your emails get placed. So throwing you in spam, putting you in other categories, like make sure you are doing that, number one. And then the other part is proper segmentation is probably the most important thing you could do, which is not all contacts are the same. Not all contacts should receive every email. Our rule of thumb is that an entire list should be getting at least 1 email a week. So anybody who is an active person should be receiving at least 1 email a week, if not more, from a brand. Usually it's some type of here's what's going on, offers, education, etc. But then on top of that, your most engaged people should be getting at least 5 emails a week. Like I'm very much in the camp that you should be emailing almost every day if you can to your most engaged people. It shouldn't all be sales. It shouldn't be buy this, buy this. It should be education, new releases, product reviews, a nice mix of that, but make sure you have segmentation. So our rule of thumb is, number one, have a most engaged audience. So people who are opening and clicking, people that are viewing your website, that type of segment, number one, they're getting the most comms. Then number two is your everybody list. So they're getting at least one email a week. And then the third one is product specific. So if you're in a certain niche and you have 3 core segments of products that you sell, make sure, if you're a sporting goods store and you sell tennis rackets, baseball bats, and golf clubs, if you're sending a thing on golf clubs, make sure you're only sending to the people who are interested in that product. So normally we'll do that target niche plus the most engaged for those emails. And this sounds very complicated. It's not. Like, most good email service providers will give you help on the segmentation setup. It sounds like it should be a 2-month process. There, you can get very complicated with it, and an agency will probably go in and do a lot of that stuff. But if you're just starting off or want to take a look, hop into the segment builders on most of the good email service providers, and you'll be able to get a good footing on where you stand and see what's delivering, and track your numbers. Look at your open rates, your click rates, your KPIs. Like, the cool part about email and SMS is you get live feedback, because you can look at what happened on today's email versus yesterday's email versus last week's email and track the growth through there. So I'd highly encourage that.
Yeah, that's some great advice. And I used to be in the camp of, you mentioned some of those highly engaged people sending them, 5 emails in a week. I used to be in the camp of, that's too much. I can't email somebody that many times. They're going to opt out. But then, I think the trends have started to change a bit. I started to see a lot of these major brands. I'm looking at my inbox. I'm like, geez, they're hitting me up every day. And it's not just one brand. It's a lot of the brands. They're all doing that. And you really have to, people that are engaged, if they're not opting out, if they are, of course, you still have to look at the data. You got to look at your numbers. Are they opening it? What are they doing? Where are they clicking on the email? And then that'll really speak to, okay, is it too much or is it, not enough? So yeah, it's a great thing to know.
And I think that one's a cool one. There's so much data that you can see that. What we traditionally see is not, at least of the most engaged pods, we usually see most unsubscribes of the pool, and it's a very small percentage on the ones you're sending to the broad list weekly, because it's people that might have just churned through. But on the most engaged, you got to think of these as your super fans. They probably do want to hear from you that frequently. And if you don't go to them that frequently, you risk getting lost in the noise, because all of your competitors, I promise, are sending that frequently. And you have to make sure it's not spammy. Like, if you're pushing an email out, make sure it's good content, make sure it looks clean, make sure there's clear places to opt out, and make it a good, high-performing email. And make sure to mix it up. Like I said earlier, if you send 7 straight go buy this emails, you're going to have some complaints. But if,
for sure.
Here's a sale thing, here's educational content, here's stuff in the news, here's stuff you can take home, I think your odds are far better of a strong performing email system that you're growing by far more than you're losing in unsubscribes.
Yeah, definitely. Now, I know you've worked with a lot of different companies, a lot of brands. You've done a lot of stuff, just even for your own brand with regards to emails. I wanted to see, could you share an example of a campaign, a specific campaign or automation flow that really significantly boosted the revenue from, email or SMS? And, was there something specific that made it so successful?
Yeah. So we actually, here, I'll give a crazy fact that will go into this example. So we did a case study with a client who's in the sporting goods e-com. They sell bats, and campaigns are good. We helped grow that program all the way up. And that's actually the one where we did a case study and hundreds of thousands of subscribers through that channel using this funnel. But the interesting fact is, I think, like we spoke about, a lot of the focus is on campaigns and sending what you think of as the mass batch, send them out. Automation. So Omnisend, who is the email service provider we use for this client, who's a partner of ours, they put out an annual report because they can aggregate, probably billions of emails and see where it's going. And the fact was crazy that I think it was right around 40% of email revenue that they saw on platform was driven from automations. And it was somewhere under 5% of the total volume of sends. So less than 5% of the total sends was reporting for almost 40%, if not more, of the revenue, which is insane. So on that, like, we've seen welcome series alone be worth $500,000. just by updating that and automating that and growing the platform all the way up. Like we generally see that on our client accounts, it goes up to, let's call it 40 to 50% of the total revenue through the channel is driven from automations, which is insane. So that was one of the case studies we did where once we actually could look at the data, it was kind of shocking how insane the performance on those channels outside of what you'd think, hey, we're going to send campaigns here and drive normal traffic. So that was one exciting case study because number one, it proves that automations are worthwhile. Number two, it shows the value of setting up a proper funnel because you're basically self-liquidating from any of the spend directly through the welcome series where we can almost grow it at the exact speed that we wanted to because it was profitable. So that's one where I think it just shows the value of doing those and setting it up properly. And it gives you the ability to scale because if you know it's profitable at 20,000 subscribers, if you keep going up, there's usually not a tremendous inverse relationship there.
Yeah, that's what I've seen as well. Yeah, it's that's a good marker. Like you said, at that 20% mark, you're getting good traction as long as you don't change a whole lot and you kind of keep the same engagement, keep the flow. You got to mix it up, of course, as far as the content is concerned. But as long as you steadily do that, that will be effective as you grow it.
So the crazy thing, so for that case study, we used Facebook ads as a lead magnet to drive the low cost subscriber growth. And then the welcome series alone drove over $400,000 in revenue.
Oh, wow.
Just from that one channel. And it went from 15,000 subscribers to 146,000 subscribers in right around 2 years at profitable growth. So that's where it's huge. Yeah. So that was a fun one to do and take a look back. And there's a couple of those where, again, it changes a lot depending on what's the lifetime value of the client on that brand, how much is the actual average order value on a brand. But once you know that similar principles apply, it's just being able to adjust it to whatever the brand is, but it's a similar toolkit every time.
Yeah, it definitely is. And thank you for sharing that example. That really, speaks to just the power of email and SMS and what you can do if you just, follow those kind of core principles from the basics all the way through to, the segmentation. And like you said, be making sure you stick through it all the way through. Because I've seen it so many times where a brand is, and you can kind of tell they're gung ho with their campaigns. You start getting some really interesting emails and then you forget about the brand. And then, maybe like 4 months later, you see another email and you're like, okay, what happened? At that point, you went with another brand or you forgot about them.
100%. And another one that I would highly recommend is make sure you're doing SMS with email. I think a lot of times they operate in silos where somebody thinks, hey, we're getting email going. And that in itself is a great platform. Or, hey, we have loyalty. Or, hey, we have SMS. Try and have an actual integrated marketing effort across the board. They all support each other.
Yes, that's for sure. Well, this has been an awesome conversation, Jesse. I really appreciate you coming on. I've learned a ton. There's a lot of definite golden nuggets in this conversation. So I think if someone listens carefully and rewinds and takes note, these things will definitely go a long way for any e-commerce brand. But lastly, before we close things out, I always like to shift gears so our audience can get to know you a little bit better. If you don't mind sharing one closing fun fact about yourself that you think we'd be interested to know.
Yeah, totally. Well, usually my go-to fun fact is that I started a podcast at 16. However, we use that one. So another thing that's been fun is during COVID back in 2020 when I was in college, a buddy and I were like, hey, we need community. And we all went home from college. So we started this thing called the Making Lemonade Fund, which was a nonprofit to support COVID relief. And we had over 400 people just like us, our age, that went and raised over $125,000 in COVID relief, just all online, all digital. And I think it was fun. It just proved that people our generation care and you don't have to be in person and you could do a really cool thing online in 75 days. So that will be the business fun fact one outside of the podcast because we jumped into that one.
Yeah, that's awesome, man. Yeah, and like you said, it does speak to the power of community. Even if that community is virtual, there's still a lot you can do with rallying people around a particular effort. So
100%.
Great to know, man. Thank you for sharing that. I appreciate that. Lastly, before we do let you go, what is the best way for our listeners and viewers to get a hold of you if they want to pick your brain any more about all things SMS, email, or anything under that sun?
Yeah, well, first off, thank you so much for having me. This was great. Appreciate the time.
No problem.
You can find me anywhere you'd expect to find me, probably LinkedIn, X, Instagram, any of the above. You can just look up my name, Jesse K, Jesse, last name Kay. And then if you want to see more of the work we're doing at Viber, you could go to our website, which is vibermedia.com, VYBER media.com.
Okay, that's awesome. We'll be sure to have the links to your site and your handles in the show notes and within our website as well, so people can reach out to you there. Well, Jesse, this has been awesome talking to you. I really appreciate you coming on the E-Commerce Marketing Podcast.
Thanks for the time.
Thank you for listening to the E-Commerce Marketing Podcast. If you've enjoyed this episode, be sure to rate, review, subscribe, and share it with everyone you know. Are you looking to take your digital marketing to the next level but are tired of weeding through countless YouTube videos with unproven and untrusted marketing strategies? Well, we have the answer for you. The More Sales Every Month online digital marketing course. In this information-packed course, you will learn effective keyword research, link building, content marketing, and much more to attract and convert your site visitors into paying customers. Just go to moresaleseverymonth.com and sign up today for a low one-time fee. In addition to this power-packed course, if you would like to get access to a growing repository of digital marketing articles, PDFs, and ebooks, check out getosi.com/resources and opt in to get full access to our library of priceless marketing information to help you take your digital marketing to the next level.